I think for a time in my life, I thought, man, God is tricky. Why does he keep tricking me? But now that we're where we're at, I'm realizing, wow, even in the discomfort and the hardships, I can see exactly what he was doing with that. God is in the details of our lives, how he's there for us. And I think in my mind growing up, I used to think, well, God takes care of everything. It's going to be perfect. It should look perfect. Only when it's perfect will I then know that God is in every single detail. I feel like here I am, 47, I'll be 48 in a handful of months. And my whole perspective has shifted and changed on the way God works. I think in my mind, we think that God is going to just offer constant comfort and reassurance and safety. But now, as I look back, I realize he is in the details. And sometimes we have to have that time and we have to have that experience. And as we followed every little thing that we felt inspired to do, how it's all added up to something really amazing. Even yesterday, how long did we counsel for yesterday?
2 hours.
2 hours. And we sat there, we said a prayer, and then we just sat in stillness. I would say that we've gotten to a place where I think you and I both can say, hey, we truly trust one another and God. And I think that that ultimately is what marriage should be about. All right. So it's kind of crazy that we have, I feel like we've been in a whirlwind of living lately. And I feel like we're now here at this place of just complete shift and change. And we've only done how many episodes thus far? 6?
Probably 6.
6 episodes. So depending on what we air, lots of you viewers are going to be jumping on probably around episode 6 to see us here. And it's a completely different studio. Everything's shifted and changed. And so today, I really felt like it was important for us to kind of talk about what's happened in our lives. And I think it's specifically discussed kind of what we're about in terms of our show being called Designly Done and how it's to take on the word divinely done and how we feel like God is in the details of our lives and we're creating our lives hand in hand with him and with each other. And so why don't you share what we've been going through in the last, since I would say the last week in June. That was when everything shifted and changed. And we haven't filmed anything since maybe the beginning of June.
Yeah, I think that was probably the last time that we did. It was the 1st of June.
So our viewers will be seeing episodes back to back by weeks, but there's been a big time lapse in our recording.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's been going on? I want you to share.
So back in June, there was a few catalysts in our life, I guess, let's call it that helped us to like make changes that we were not aware of that we were going to be making. Our son he just left on a mission, 2-year mission for our church. He's in Bolivia now at this time. And so, back in June, he was getting ready to leave. He left in July. And so, right around July, he started his home. They call it the home MTC. So that went on for a week. And so, but a little bit before that, there was a few things that happened in Arizona that just kind of made it to where we decided to uproot after 20 years and move to Utah. And so we'd looked at Utah a couple of years ago. We actually had a lot in Midway, Utah in escrow, and the timing wasn't right. And so we let that go, and we figured, hey, we need to get Kelson out of high school. He's our son that's on the mission. And so we waited a couple more years, and he graduated in May. And then as soon as he left on his mission, we up and packed all of our stuff and moved to Utah. The 1st of July, when we came up here for the 4th of July.
You were here for the 4th.
Yeah, I was here for the 4th.
So I was at a Nationals dance convention in Vegas with Landry, our youngest child.
Yeah. So I started looking for lots with our agent up there.
Which is, mind you, only about a week and a half to 2 weeks after like we had that final epiphany. We can go back and talk about that later. But I mean, really, it was a very short amount of time.
Yeah. So super short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
I think we knew kind of the middle of June that we were going to...
No, it was late June.
Late June?
It was late June. I've gone back and I was...
3rd week of June, something like that.
Yeah, end of 3rd.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of interesting. I remember that morning I was driving back from someplace and I was kind of deep in thought, as you're driving, and I thought, where would I want to be if I could be anywhere that would make me happy? Where would I want to be? And instantly, it kind of came to like the Heber Valley river. There's the Provo River right there. I love to fly fish, and ski resorts, Deer Valley, Park City, Sundance is all right there, and then all the mountain biking as well. And then there's just
So it's Justin's perfect. It's like Justin's
exactly
Justin's perfect setup.
But there's also a ton of growth that's going on up there too.
Right.
So the
Right.
Olympics is coming in, 2030 something, and so there's a bunch of
A potential for what we do is
for custom
business,
home
right.
building for what we do. There's tons of growth going there, and
Right.
we just looked at that area for quite some time now, and then right after that there was something that happened, and yeah, so we just kind of decided, okay, well, this might be the best time to go. Kelson's out of high school. And
yeah, which is kind of interesting because looking back, I think that you and I had the discussion when we put that lot in escrow a couple of years ago. We had gone through the due diligence of trying to figure out if that was the right timing for us. And it felt like everything was like a no. Even though we had it in escrow, that lot, and we had put forth action that way, every other action we tried to take was like an instant no.
Well, and there was multiple lots. I think we had in escrow. One of them stuck. The first one we got into negotiation
Oh, that's
with
right.
the owner
That's
of
right.
it, but it had to be split. And there was,
Yes.
and then we got on.
Yeah, there was just all kinds of details that were going on, and we realized.
So there was a bunch of problems with it. The second one, we had to sell our house. So it was contingent upon the sale of our house. And so the house didn't sell at that time. And
Like
so,
we needed more time.
we just needed more time to get rid of it.
Okay, so moving forward, like it's been so miraculous. I would say the last year of our life, about a year. When did we sell our house? About a year ago.
Exactly.
It's just been like it's been so crazy. Like just the buyers were the perfect buyers. What we made off of it was incredible. With just the way things were and just leading up to that. And I want to talk today. The reason why I brought up just this move is because the topic that I really want to emphasize and focus on today is how God is in the details of our lives, how he's there for us. And I think in my mind growing up, I used to think, well, God takes care of everything. It's going to be perfect. It should look perfect. Only when it's perfect will I then know that God is in every single detail. And it's been so interesting. I feel like here I am, 47, I'll be 48 in a handful of months. And my whole perspective has shifted and changed on the way God works. I think in my mind, we think that God is going to just offer constant comfort and reassurance and safety. But now, as I look back, I realize he is in the details. And as we have been prayerful, as you and I have really worked hard to counsel with one another, as we're both seeking to do our part to stay intuitive and in tune, how I'm recognizing like that God is very much in the details of not the easy, not in the comforts, but also in the discomfort. And oftentimes he sets us up. And I don't want to use the word setup because that feels manipulative or like he's tricky. And I think for a time in my life, I thought, man, God is tricky. Why does he keep tricking me? But now that we're where we're at, I feel like since we've been in Utah, like my eyes have opened up to the past handful of years. And I'm realizing, wow, even in the discomfort, in the hardships, in the like the moments where I was like, wow, I feel abandoned, or hey, I followed that thought or that intuitive, like that feeling and that knowing that that was the path I should have taken and it didn't turn out the way I wanted. I kept feeling tricked, but now I'm like, no, I can see exactly what he was doing with that. And sometimes we have to have that time and we have to have that experience. And I think you and I getting on the same page years ago, if you go back to, I think, was it an episode further back where we talked about the buffalo story and talking, and we really learned how to like counsel with each other and talk with each other. Now I can see as we counseled and as we followed every little thing that we felt inspired to do, how it's all been added, like it's all added up to something really amazing. And where we're at right now in this pivotal time in our life, how incredible that has been. Like, would you say that's true? Like there's almost a certain amount of peace. And I think too, like my trust in God and my trust in the process. Even yesterday, how long did we counsel for yesterday?
2 hours.
2 hours. And we sat there, we said a prayer, and then we just sat in stillness. And we're like, hey, this comes to mind. And then we would talk about that. And we would get through everything until it felt final. We go, okay, now what's the next thing? And we did that. And we were patient. And as we wrote everything down, I would say that we've gotten to a place where I think you and I both can say, hey, we truly trust one another and God. And I think that ultimately is what marriage should be about. It's that trusting between you and your spouse, and that trusting where you come together, but you're also both doing your part to connect to God and then trust those impressions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think counsel is everything. And which was interesting because day before yesterday I was off, and yesterday morning it started that way too, where I was like, oh, something's off, and I'm feeling all these different emotions, and kind of like, what's going on, and like where, and so it was good to check in and kind of go over things and reassure, hey, here's the plan that we're working on, and what we need to work on together, and that really helped. So
right. I would agree. I think I remember kind of doing some things yesterday morning, trying to like be prayerful in like, what do I need to do today and what I need to accomplish. And I remember feeling like the stuck feeling. And then the thought I had was, call Justin. And so you were up in Midway and I was at home, and we were able to have that discussion. And I feel like that's much longer. I mean, let's be realistic. We don't sit there and do 2 hours.
yeah.
But like every once in a while, I feel like we have that really massive reset, or that massive like, hey, let's touch base and let's touch in. And then other times it's quick. It's like, 20 minutes and we're like, okay, hey, we have that. Like we can both feel this is what we need to do when we move forward. So yeah, I just feel like it's been such a blessing. And our life as it's pivoted has been pretty remarkable. I've seen, and you can either validate me or add to this. But when we had that moment that day, there was one specific day where it was that morning you had that thought, where would I be happy? Where do I want to be? And that was the day I had an experience. And do you remember me coming home and I was
a mess?
A mess.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there and thinking, and I know I said out loud, I'm not happy here. I'm not like, my heart is not here. Doesn't mean I'm not a happy person. It doesn't mean I haven't found a lot of joy in a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I felt empty in Arizona. I felt like we've been clawing at things, and we were getting ready to do a big push on our business.
Mm-hmm.
We even talked about that in one of our episodes.
Yeah.
So we filmed all of these episodes prior to this, before all of this event.
Yeah.
And I remember that day just looking at you and saying, we are not supposed to be here. We are not supposed to be here. And how interesting was it that you were already prepared to receive that?
Yeah, I think about 18 months ago, you had made a comment about that. Like, I don't think what we're trying to accomplish will happen here.
Yes.
I think we need to be in Utah. And we kind of just like blew it off. And we always kind of thought like, well, when our kids are gone, out of the house, then we'll move to Utah.
When Landry is.
Yeah, our daughter is living in Holiday right now. Kelson's on a mission. Landry still has 5 years of school left. So
we thought we'd be there for sure.
So we just didn't figure that it would happen this quick. And it was literally like, Kelson's out the door. All right, we're leaving with him out the door.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think, so let's talk about that. So, through everything that we've experienced, and I think with where our mindset was at the time, we going back to, hey, 2 years ago, we had looked at the lot. Nope, timing's wrong. We put in our minds, oh, we need to wait till Landry leaves.
mm-hmm.
And then it was this like perfect moment of like, where everything converged and all of our emotions converged, and we realized we're not supposed to be here. That this is what's so beautiful about this, and where I look at our story and I'm just so grateful. First of all, I think Landry's studio that she was at in Arizona, like we thought, oh, she's at one of the best in the nation. I think we also like, hey, like we've got a great school. We had a lot, or we still have. So if anybody's interested.
Yeah.
And we had house plans, beautiful house plans. Like everything in our mind was saying, no, this is your path. This is it. So when that all converged and when it came to that, like that massive epiphany, that big aha, that big awakening, it was so beautiful how like we just knew, well, wait a second, like there's an incredible studio up in Utah. So Center Stage here produces a lot of Dancing with the Stars, like professional dancers and cougarettes. I think they're known for having connections with cougarettes. And so like it just made sense. And then we've always, Justin, since we were first married, have had our hearts on Midway and Heber. Like we've always loved that. And we've driven up there countless times. So already I feel like God had already shown us and already prepared us to see the things that would bring peace to our lives. And then on top of that, I think the timing was divine in terms of what Kelson needed. Kelson was supposed to stay there. There was a special family that he needed to connect with, special friends he needed to connect with. We saw tremendous growth in Kelson in the last year. Had we gotten up and moved, he would have been in a new place, new valley. Who's to say that wouldn't have thwarted the growth that he needed?
Yeah.
And so this goes back to today's, what our overall message is like, God is in the details. And then on top of that, me being like, I'm not a copter parent. I wouldn't say I'm a copter parent at all, but I love my children and I love spending time with them. And I am just like, they're everything to me. So when Caitlin left home, I went through a very big shift. Like I felt very depressed and sad. Like I don't get depressed easily, but my emotions were all over the place. But we got so busy so fast with this move. And so not only were we diving into, getting him ready for his mission and all the events that surround that and the planning and preparing for that, but we were starting to move. And it did not allow me the time for sadness and the suffering that would have been far greater, because here I'm sending my son to Bolivia, not to Utah, where I can hop on a plane and see her 2 times a month, which is basically what we're doing. So I think that God knows me well enough to know, Ashley, we've got to do something to get your mind off of this.
Yeah, that's true. And Caitlin's been in Utah for about 18 months now. And so we started spending a lot more time.
18, but
it'll be almost 18 months. And so, we started spending a lot more time up here more frequently.
Yeah.
And I think the writing was on the wall that it was just kind of like, okay, we're starting to move in that direction.
And what a gift that God gave to me to be reconnected with my daughter and to have her in closer proximity, knowing, hey, I'm losing a child, but let's get you closer to another one. And so there was just all these little divine miracles. And then even just like packing the house and getting things done. Like, wouldn't you say like little tiny miracles just kept popping up?
Yeah.
And made our load lighter.
Yeah. And I think also when you're supposed to do something, your life will become uncomfortable. And I think that it was starting to get uncomfortable with work situations and just with,
oh my God,
with
so many
our
situations.
kids' situations, like with Landry, and just kind of, she wasn't that excited about going to dance, and she wasn't making the best connections. And so I think for her, that was our biggest concern, was just kind of like, are we just going to rip her out of here and take her up to Utah? And since she's been here, a month now, 6 weeks now, she's thriving in school. She loves her classes. She likes her teachers. She doesn't complain.
No.
And right now we're living in Springville and driving to Heber. And it's like 50-minute drive each way. And, I get up in the morning with her and she does not complain once at all about driving up there.
Do you know what though? Like, okay, let's talk about that real quick before we move on. I think that's even been a miracle, having that time. Sometimes we look at things like, oh, this is such a discomfort. This is such a, like, I can't believe this is our situation. But the time and the connection that you're getting with Landry, and even you guys are putting scriptures on and having more meaningful discussions, I feel like that's been a blessing.
Yeah, and this morning we were listening to the New Testament and she's asking questions. And so when do you actually have 45 minutes of time to talk to your kids? And
such a gift.
They can't go anywhere. They're with you for that full 45. And so we'll take, she'll ask me questions and bring stuff up. And so and
you know what, that's, again, it's an answer to my prayers, because I feel like we have focused. I don't know if I've talked about this in previous podcasts, but our 2 oldest children got they had parents that had a lot of healing to do. We had a lot of generational healing. We had a lot of emotional healing. Landry kind of came at the beginning. After I gave birth, that's kind of when everything crashed. But I feel like Landry's seen us on this like upward trajectory, like, and mind you,
She's about what, 5 or 6 years younger than Kelson?
yes. But I would say that Landry saw when you and I started to connect with God as well, she saw this upward trajectory. And so of all of our children, you and I have said, she seems to be the one that has thrived naturally and hasn't needed the healing. We've had to do a lot of work to get our Caitlin and Kelson where they're at. Wouldn't you say we've had to do a ton of work?
That's true.
A lot of help. And this is not just you and I doing our, we've found support systems and all the things that they've needed. And we've been very prayerful about that. But it's just been so interesting how the one area where I felt that Landry was lacking has been, we haven't done a lot of, because we've been so concentrated on Kelson and Caitlin because she was thriving and she was doing so great. And when I need to go back and emphasize, like, it's not like Caitlin and Kelson were making mistakes or being terrible kids.
No.
They were just suffering in areas that Landry just has never suffered. They were having situations and life lessons that were so much harder than Landry's ever really had. And they've even said, that's not fair. Why is it so easy for her? And we're like, sorry, she just got more healed versions of her parents. So naturally, her brain has been able to process and do things differently. So anyways, with that being said, I feel like Landry was one area we were failing in was her spiritual growth, especially with dance. I think dance can take us away on Sundays. Awesome reason for being here in Utah is that Center Stage. I've noticed like their competitions are on Sundays, so that's an added blessing. But I feel like God's like, this is her moment. This is the moment that you get to give her that gift. Would you say that's truth?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think, just listening to the feedback that we get from her the past few weeks, she's definitely jiving more, I guess is the best word, with dance. And she wants, she's made a lot of comments about, like, and for those of you that don't know, the Cougarettes are the competition team for BYU. And so she's made comments like, well, I want to do this. And the other night, she made a comment about Dancing with the Stars, and we're kind of like, oh, where'd that come from?
She's like, I want to be on Dancing with the Stars.
I want to be on Dancing with the Stars, So now we're talking about, I'm like, okay, well, I haven't heard that. And Ashley's like, well, you're not the best at ballroom or something like that.
No, I didn't say that. I would never say that. I said, well,
you haven't had that much experience.
Just so you're aware, a lot of those professionals started doing ballroom at the ages 3, 4, or 5 years old.
Yeah.
She's only had a couple years. And cute Landry, she said, I'm a fast learner. I'll learn. And you know what? You could feel it. Like, she knows. She's like, I'm a fast learner and I can get that.
Like, okay, well, let's do it then. If that's what you want to do. So we didn't see as much of the confidence and those comments coming out of her when we were in Arizona.
Yeah.
So I really honestly think that for her to thrive, Arizona is what our other two children needed. But for her, Utah is what she needs, and up until Kelson left on his mission, it was his friend group that he was with, and the other families that he was hanging out with. He really needed that. And then as soon as he was gone, it was like, okay, your time is, you're ready to leave now. And so,
and he's doing awesome.
And now it's like, let's focus on Landry, and this is what she needs at this time in her life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just been amazing. And honestly, I'm just so grateful, and I feel so blessed. I feel so blessed that you and I have had our experiences. So one of the things that I think sometimes we look at our hardships and we look at the things that we're enduring, and we ask, why, God, why? And we're upset and we're angry. And honestly, first of all, like, I'm not saying that God just like he puts these trials in our life or he's the one that's creating them. Sometimes they're self-made.
Yeah.
They're made by other people's actions. We have agency. And sometimes we have mortal bodies. Like, so sometimes we get sick, and it could be a result of how we're treating our bodies. Sometimes it's just, we don't have the answers. But I will say this, looking back on the last 13 years of our life, because really things spiraled after I gave birth to Landry.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is probably because I was on fertility medications, and man, they mess you up. At least they did for me. But I would say that God has been in those details, and it's all been, I think, a big awakening to you and I that started, and we started to be more intentional about how we connected to God. So talk to me about that. Like, I would love, like, my question for you is, what have you seen has made the difference in our lives where we're not just walking hand in hand every day, but we're walking hand in hand with God? And a lot of the things that in the future, we're going to be podcasting about,
Yeah.
I would say, are all little things that, like, God has placed in our lives to teach us about and to bring forward to help other people. But tell me about our journey, or what you like, where you see that shift and what we've done and created with that.
I think you have to be intentional. I think you have to make time for God. I think that we live in a world that is so inundated and distracted, and social media has to do with that, and gaming and whatever else, these distractions. And I really honestly think that it's like, people don't know where or what to do sometimes. And so they get into a mode of, and I know I've done this, and I think everybody does this sometimes, where it's like, we don't want to move forward. I want to just like sit and scroll, and I don't want, it sounds exhausting. I don't want to deal with this, and I don't want to do that. And so I'm just going to, like, mind numbingly scroll, here, and I don't want to move forward. And so I think that when you're intentional and you and your spouse work with God and present a plan, like, hey, I want to do this and this, and is this a good idea, and what are some things that are problems, and let's work through this and kind of work to figure out what's the best way to course of action. Then as you're talking together, then you're going to be able to.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. I remember years ago, we talked about escapism. I don't know if I came up with this word or read this word, but we would find, like, hey, are you using that as a form of escaping? Are you escaping the reality that you are facing? Are you escaping what you signed up for? Are you escaping, like, meaning, like, I birthed these children, I gave birth, we had these children. Am I escaping being a very hands-on, intentional parent?
Yeah. And
that goes to every aspect of our life.
Well, and you and I talked about this yesterday with our parents. Our parents' generation, it was, okay, kids are supposed to be seen and not heard.
I think more your side of the family than mine.
Yeah, and it was more or less like, go outside and, come back when the street lights come on type thing. And so our generation,
you kind of raise yourselves.
We kind of raised
a lot of people say that. You see a lot of, like, memes and a lot of
Instagram
things. They're like,
it's like,
we raised ourselves.
Yeah, and literally we were the ones that drank out of hoses, and rode our bikes till the streetlights came on. There were no cell phones or internet or any of that kind of stuff. And so, but with our kids, we've been more intentional with, like, and Kelson, we talked about this yesterday.
Oh, okay.
I think.
Okay, warning. But it's kind of funny. It's Kelson. It's not terrible, but it really, like.
But yeah, so
I love Kelson.
The stuff that we went through, I feel like I need to share that with our kids. Like, hey, look, I dealt with this.
Yes.
And even with him on the mission, we talk to him once a week on Monday. It's his preparation day, and so he can call home. And so last week I spent a lot of time with him, like, hey, I dealt with this on my mission in San Francisco and Oakland.
Yeah.
And that was 30 years ago. But these are the things that I dealt with, and you're going to deal with companions, and you're going to deal with some of the same problems. But he made a comment in a text like weeks prior. I said something to him about, like, giving him advice, and he's like, I think is what he said was, I really appreciate the advice you're giving me, Dad, even when it comes across as really douchey. And I kind of laughed about that, where I was like, oh, at least he's listening to it,
Yeah, and you know what? Like,
I can be really direct.
I'm going to represent Kelson here.
With the way I say things.
You are very direct. You don't sugarcoat.
No.
And so I think you're not a jerk. You're just more like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm going to tell it how it is.
Yeah, I'm just kind of like, let's cut the crap, and let's just.
Where I flower it all. I make it so pretty.
Exactly. And I think a lot of the things that we've talked to him about has been, and our kids has been about moderation, and don't get too extreme, and
Pace
having
yourself. Yeah.
conversations about that. And that, I believe, right now is one of the biggest problems that the world is in is extremism, and not
And escapism.
and and the adversary is running havoc right now with all of these mind-numbing
I agree.
things that are going on. So
I agree. And I think that was one of those things where, like, prior to the big shifts in our life, I feel like you and I were running parallel lives. So what that means is, like, I was at home, you were at work, but you would come home at the end of the day and integrate yourself back into family life. But I don't think you understood, like, the weights that I was carrying or the hardships I was carrying or what I was dealing with. And then on the flip side of that, I was numb to, like, what you were holding and what you were carrying and what you were dealing with. And I think that when I was listening to some clips yesterday about there's a scripture in the Bible. I wish I knew what it was, but it talks about, like, women, you need to be, like, subservient to your husbands. And somebody said, it, like, that really means, like, you should be a helpmate to your husband.
mhm.
And then it talks about husbands, how they should serve and love their wives. And when you think about it, like, I think people get in their minds, like, women should be, like, the man's the boss and the man gets to say. What it is a man gets to lead and guide his family and the wife is the helpmate. So it's a partnership. And I think that you and I really saw this shift when we began to partner with each other, and especially when we learned to slow down and get in tune. So when we started finding balance, but, like, your balance looked different than mine prior to us connecting. But then when we connected, we started to realize as we helped each other out that we were both a little out of balance, or we needed to be a little bit more mindful and a little bit more integrated in certain areas of our lives. And I think that came with a lot of humility on both our parts of, like, listening to one another. That's hard.
Yeah, and I think it all started, probably 6 or 7 years ago, I want to say, probably at this point, where we started building some homes and you got involved with Landry
That
down to
helps.
school.
Yeah.
So Ashley had time at home, and so she's like, well, if Landry's gone, then I'm going to start working on design. And so we really started changing the business as far as, like, from doing semi-custom to full custom design build.
Yeah.
And we did some specs. And so Ashley had gotten involved. And I think really early on, it was more or less like frustrating on my part, where it was like, oh, geez, I might as well just do it myself. By the time I explain this
I think
to you,
I've heard you say that a few times.
yeah. And so, but then eventually I started to kind of, like, okay, listen to what you're saying. I'm like, actually, she knows what she's talking about, and she's going to save me a lot of problems in the future if I just listen.
Yeah. I think that's so.
And I think that's, you can look at that situation and you can incorporate that into anybody's lifestyle, as far as, like, when a couple comes together and they communicate over their kids.
Yeah.
And family decisions. I think a lot of times I know I was kind of like this, where it was like in the beginning where I'm the guy, I know best, and I'm going to make the decisions. And really, honestly, it's like when you counsel together and you use your wife, who's your helpmeet, she's there to, like.
Well, and I think both listening to what the other partner is saying, I think we naturally want to throw our defenses up.
Yeah.
Like, I don't do that, or I'm not that way. And I think that we had, what's so funny? I do remember when we first started doing this, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be raw. Like, we would fight over some of the things we bring up.
Yeah.
Like, we get defensive, and that's not true, and that's not right. And we were kind of like, and I think that takes time to practice.
Oh, yeah. And I can remember even being inside the temple in the celestial room.
That's right. We had a
and
fight.
us, like, fighting inside the temple.
An LDS temple. Yeah. It's supposed to be peaceful. It's very peaceful.
And like having a disagreement that we would go in and talk about it in the celestial room, and then being frustrated.
You got up and walked out on me.
I got up and walked out. I'm like, I'm done. I'm not going to, do this anymore. And so in the beginning, it was
hard.
And it was hard. And so
I don't want to like glaze over this and make people think, oh, we just figured it out so perfectly. We just have it all figured out. No, I would say we have come to the point where our fights are really, like, when we get in arguments.
I wouldn't even say they're fights or disagreements.
So we don't fight like we used to, because we've learned to, like, okay, I need to have the humility to listen. And guess what? Like, when I am partnered with my spouse, when I truly want to hear what he has to say, and we both are coming from a place of love and, like, support, like that's where the magic happens. Like that's where then God can come in and go, you guys are both so humble and so willing. I'm going to help you guys out. And I want to say that's kind of when like our intuition, let's say gifts of the spirit, like our ability to tune in really grew.
Yeah. And I think that when you have conversations with your spouse and you sit there and like you said yesterday, we talked for a couple hours, we go over things like, okay, what about this? And then if you sit there and meditate might be not the right word but ponder, yeah. And you have ideas come to your mind. And I think a lot of times we're apprehensive in sharing those ideas, like, oh no, that's just like but when you do speak it out loud, that's exactly what the two of you need to like talk about, coming from both sides, where she says this and I say, this, and then you come together and that inspiration comes together and ideas are formed. And
I have a dear friend, and I've had quite a few friends that have opened up to me because they've seen the way that you and I have done things. They've seen the way that you and I talk and discuss, and we're open, and just by way of me sharing things. And it's so sad to me because the one thing that I see that runs through the issues, and I'm going to speak from the side of a woman. Okay, women have really deep intuition most of the time. I think that it kind of,
especially with the kids,
with our kids, yes. And I think that women often seek out more of that time to be still, to be quiet. I think when problems arise, I think we get those nudges a little sooner sometimes than men. Maybe I'm wrong. But what I've seen and I've noticed is kind of an epidemic is a lot of men, and I've seen other sides. I've seen other couples where the men are phenomenal. They're and the couples are very well balanced, and they're working hand in hand. The wife is the helpmeet. The husband's guiding and leading in with pure intent, kind, loving, not controlling. But I've seen a lot of men that are controlling. A lot of men who are better than, and it's my way. And my heart hurts for these women because they are trying every way they can to help their husbands see, hey, I'm on your team and I have some gifts here. It's like going back, you said something. You said there came a point where you started to go, hey, I need to listen to what she's saying because there is something there. And so now one of the things I think you kind of had working, or we've had working in our favor, is that I think you've always had kind of a tender heart towards women naturally. Your dad passed away when you were not quite 2. Your mom raised you. You had a grandma that you adored, who you said, I remind you, like when we met, that was one thing that I think drew you instantly to me, was we had some similarities in how we nurture, how we love, like just kind of how we talk in general, how we are socially with people. But I think men can be a little stubborn, especially if they maybe had a father in their home. And remember, going back to kind of, I think, the old school way is like, the man comes home, the man has worked, the man gets to, now do what he wants. And like, again, it goes back to that. Hey, we're living parallel lives. We're not living integrated lives.
Yeah.
So my question is, because I'm seeing this a lot, and I try to counsel and help some of my friends. They're like, Ashley, what would you do here? What would you do there? Because, mind you and I did have a history of some frustration as we were trying to figure this all out. And so, and lots of times, like, I don't think it's a one size fits all solution, but we kind of talk and brainstorm. But what is some advice? This is getting to you. Could you give men out there? Because I think that if you're going to live intentionally with God, if you want God to work magic in your lives, if you want, and I will say this, we've had magical moments and we've had hard moments, but all the hard moments I'm looking at now and going, it is magic. Like God had a purpose for all of this. But you and I have had to do the hard work together and stay intentional. And there's Instagrammers out there that Ashley Patron with Arrows and Bows, love her. Her and her husband, people should follow her. They are so on together. They're doing exactly what you and I are doing. And you can see the magic in their lives. And she talked once about hardships, and, people think that my life is just so amazing and so perfect and so beautiful. She goes, no, like even there's even those points in life where we're like, what is he doing? What is God doing? And it's terrifying. She's like, but we wait for that to unfold. So anyways, I want you to give men advice. What do they need to do to get equally yoked with their wives, to start counseling together, to start working together so that, and then getting connected to God? Like, what is your advice?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think early on in our marriage, I was spending a lot of time golfing and away from home, and that was starting to kind of create a wedge, in our relationship. Younger kids at home, and
Yeah.
so I was working all day, gone, and then I would leave again for another 5 hours. And so I think that, that was one of those things where it was like being mindful of what your spouse has got going on. So,
Yeah.
and everybody's in different stages of their life. And so when you got younger kids, they demand more. When your kids are, in school and they get older and they take care of themselves, you got more time. And so I think that when our kids got older, we started spending more time together. And back to what I just said a few minutes ago, it was like, not until we started spending more time together with work, I started to kind of break down the walls of like, well, she doesn't know what she's talking about. And, I started to listen and kind of, and it reminds me of one of those things where a guy's trying to put together something like a bike or a grill, and the wife's sitting there looking at the instructions, and the guy is, the guy, and I've got this, and she's just sitting there patiently watching, and then he gives up, and then she shows him, the instructions on how it's supposed to do, because, but it's a pride thing, and so I think really honestly what it comes down to is like lowering your pride,
Yeah.
and being humble and listening to somebody else's perspective, and she's got your best,
Yeah.
you
I would agree. Like, I mean, we want to love our husbands. We want, like, women crave that connection. Just like men love the physical intimacy.
Yeah.
We women want that. Like, that is our intimacy. It's
Yeah.
like knowing a man is like fully invested in what we want to create.
Yeah.
We're creators. So we want our men to create with us.
And I really honestly think that it's like, women, especially you, want to talk about your children, and they want to talk about, hey, what every single one of them's going through. And what are some suggestions that so-and-so needs? Caitlin needs this, Kelson needs this. And,
because we can't see it all.
Because and so it's like, hey, Monday's coming up. It's Kelson's preparation day. What are some things that we need to talk about with him, and hey, Caitlin's going through this, and what are some things that, through the week that we could talk about and help her.
And I love that. Like, that is so beautiful. Like, Justin, you and I are very well aware of all three of our kids.
Yeah.
We share conversations we've had. I mean, obviously for our kids, I don't share that with dad or mom. We're not going to.
Yeah.
But like, we are always on top. Like, I wouldn't say you know any more or any less than I do about any of our kids. And if we do, it's very minimal, and it will eventually come up. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. But I think that we're still invested together.
Yeah. And it's like, you have to be invested together to the point where you're not just roommates. And I just read something this past week where individuals are having a second spouse with Chat GPT, and and so it's like they just become roommates and share paying the bills, and they share having kids, but they're living completely separate lives. And so I really honestly think a reality check would be, when your children get older, do they want to come back?
Yes.
And do they want to spend time with you?
Yes.
Because it's not required of them. And where do they spend their time? Do they come back home? Do they want to spend time with you? If they don't, then that's when it's like, hey, there's probably something wrong there, and you need to make them feel heard and special.
Like, don't you think it takes both parents to create that together?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It's like what you create, the beauty of it is both parents.
Yeah.
I have a friend, she's amazing. I'm hoping she'll come on, but we met her in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why, but Courtney and Bo, just like the love that they pour into their children, it's so equal. And I'm not, okay, I don't want to say equal because I don't know 100%, but it seems, because, I think there's things I do for my kids that you don't do for your kids.
Yeah.
And, and there's things you do for them that I can't do. It's just the roles of man, woman, and like skills and what we both have to offer. But I will say that they pour love into their children. And I see that love, and I see that they care, and they really want to be there for their kids, and they go out of their way. And, like Courtney took her son back to school, and Bo was right there with them.
Mm-hmm.
And like, those are beautiful moments that we give our children when we work together And I'm not saying that sometimes dad doesn't have things that he has to stay home from, or because we can't 100% always be there,
Yeah.
but when you're intentional and you do your best to show up for your kids and you have both man and wife on each other's side, like it is powerful. And I think also to move our children, to move their hearts, to move them in healing direction, to move them towards things that are good and true for them. It's going back to what you said, seeing it together and working together and counseling with them. There's a power behind that. And that it shows so much love and compassion and like, we're here for you. It's like their little team.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately that's what I think a husband and wife need to provide for their families.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, unfortunately, we're seeing it unravel in our society as far as like mental health goes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and we've had this conversation with the recent events from last week with what happened at UVU, and I think you're dealing with a lot of people that their mental state is like a pressure cooker,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about to explode because they don't have any outlets and nobody's talking to them and nobody's listening
Or
to
teaching them how to unload that.
Exactly. Yeah, and we live in a world today where there's people that say, well, you shouldn't persuade your children to do this or that. They should just figure it out by themselves. That's the dumbest
I don't know
advice
why,
I've
but
ever
that
heard.
that just makes me sick.
Yeah, that's like just saying, let's drop you off in Africa in the middle of nowhere
With no tools.
without a guide
Or resources. Go
and
go
see
for
if the animals just devour you, you know?
or not, or you'll figure it out.
Yeah, or take you helicopter skiing and just drop you off without a guide to get you down the mountain and you end up off of an avalanche someplace. Parents are guides for their children to help them navigate through life. And back to what I said earlier about with Kelson. Yeah, does it come across really like, direct, but he's getting to the point in his life now where, dad knows and mom knows because they've been through this.
You know what's even better and even cooler about this? I had this thought this morning. It's so funny that this is coming up. As I was ironing my pants, which I actually spilled my protein shake on. So on the way here, and it's, obviously visible from the camera. It's been quite a morning. But what's really cool is I was ironing these pants, getting ready for this. I started thinking about our oldest child, and I started thinking, wow, like we've counseled her on some things recently, and like I'm seeing these little light bulbs click in her, and she's making her own decisions. We counsel always in love and in like, hey, what do you think you should do? Or, hey, these are some thoughts. Not, hey, you will do this. This is what has to be done. Sometimes we've had a counsel like, hey, we see that you're now to a point you can sustain yourself, so we're going to now hand this bill over to you because we know this is going to give you worth. We always teach the why. But it's so interesting because the ultimate goal in all of this is to really teach them ultimately how to govern themselves and how to, like, again, seek the right tools and use their intuition with God. Because, right now she's not married. She's not married to anybody. So it's between her and God.
Yeah.
And right now we're helping her to get to that point that she can then learn to counsel and take that forward. But it's been so cool because I finally realized like she's getting it. Like we've given her these tools and we've been doing this long enough that I've just seen so much growth and so much like self-worth and so much motivation that she's now doing on her own. So I'm seeing almost like that little, how Landry kind of got that naturally because of where we were. You're seeing her, she's just flying now.
Yeah.
And I would say the same with Kelson, like on his mission, right?
Yeah. And I think, it just kind of comes down to, like you mentioned, Landry and getting it is they're being heard and they're able to talk it out with their parents and the problems and that, on the way to school, she talks about her teacher. She talks about her friends. She talks about like stuff that she's going through. And when you take her to dance, she's doing the same thing. And
she's they're awesome.
And then even at night before she goes to bed, it's like, hey, Mom, can you come in? And I want to talk about this. And so
she brought something up last night. And I was like, honey, I'm like, you need to go to sleep. Can we please talk about this tomorrow? I'm like, I don't have the solution right now. But
yeah, I mean, we've trained him and talked to him about like, hey, these are things that need to be talked about and you can work through them. And I look at it this way, if you don't give them a platform to talk about these emotions and these
Yeah.
things, you're going to be paying for therapy, and they're going to be talking to a therapist
Yeah.
about it.
I had this image like we need to wrap things up in terms of just like God and guidance, and because really ultimately this life is bumpy. Like, right? Like there's no perfect smooth ride. It's kind of like when I said in the beginning, I thought everything would be perfect, and that means God is in my life and he's taking care of me. And I realized like I said, no, there's growth and so much beauty that comes from the hardships. And joy and sadness can run very parallel to each other. You can have a lot of joy in your life and still be sad about things. But ultimately, that's why you and I are always counseling. How can we help, this problem? Or, hey, let's live in gratitude for these, but we got to focus on this. And we're teaching our kids these things and we're helping them. But I like to think of it as like a bowling alley with bumpers. Like we really, and on two different levels. Like one, as parents, God and us working together are kind of giving our kids some grace. We're putting up bumpers. So when you say the world's way is now, let kids govern themselves, don't give them any guidance.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when you become wise, like you and I, with our experiences and the things we've gone through and the things we counsel our kids on, because we've gained that knowledge and that experience through a lot of suffering or heartache or pain, or just through just our own life experiences, we are putting up bumpers with God, and we're helping our children to really try to keep that bowl going down the alley and striking those pins. So basically making things happen, or allowing those goals to happen, or healing to happen, or whatever we need developmentally or in our life, we're trying to get to that goal, right? And I feel like in our own personal story, what's been the magic in all of this is that God had bumpers up even still for us.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you say, being here in Utah now, like God had to put some bumpers up because we didn't have the knowledge. We didn't understand. We weren't seeing it clearly. We didn't have earthly parents giving us that proper guidance. He put those bumpers up, and it was so cool because he doesn't fail us. Like when we are truly trying to live and do our part, when we're trying to seek him, those bumpers are going to be easier for us to see. And we're going to eventually hit that goal and go, oh my goodness, God had it all along.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really remarkable. And that's the gift I think we're giving our children. And that's the gift we give to each other in having that marriage.
Yeah, that's true. And the thought came, I'm glad that we were able to work with Kelson and give him those tools, because now he's in a third world country, and he's
second world, third
I
world.
don't know what it is.
It's rough.
It's pretty rough
world
there, so he's already had a parasite this past week. And so, but we've given him the tools that now he can use those tools to navigate, and hey, okay, he can hear his parents' voice, and inspiration,
or seek it, or he knows how to
to seek it himself,
Yeah.
and he can figure out solutions to those problems that he's going to run into. But we've given him the tools to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, it's such a blessing. I feel like really, I feel like that's covering everything. I just feel so blessed. I think that this world, like more and more and more, am I convinced how much we need God and how much we need him. And I think that there's a revival in this country.
Yeah, especially after last week's events, you're really starting to see people kind of like take a double take and like, this isn't working,
Yeah.
And so I think you're seeing youth, young adults where
we've heard some really cool stories lately.
Yeah,
we don't need to tell the stories.
Yeah, but I mean, they're coming to their parents and they're just like, I'm not happy. I don't like this,
life's not working for me. I need God.
We need to change things around. And I find, happiness and joy through, going to and talking to God and going to church and spending time with like-minded Christians and those Christian principles. And so, the world's ways there's a whole lot of misery out there.
Yeah. Well, I think it's becoming ever so apparent. I'm like, okay, like I think that these things were trickier. But now things are becoming more, I don't want to say black or white, but
Yeah,
more obvious, like this is destructive.
Yeah, the spiritual apathy that's like
Yeah.
been, rampant for so long, and
We're seeing so much hatred.
yeah, you're seeing this like, Sunday fun day and, and it's like all that kind of stuff.
But you're seeing a lot of hatred. You're seeing a lot of people that can't problem solve, people that are in, like we said, they're escaping through forms and means that are really unhealthy. You're seeing a lot of families being abandoned by their mothers or their fathers. You're seeing abuse rampant. I mean, it's always been there, but it's just like picking up. It's just like this upward, like the swing of just sheer evil in the world, and we just need one another. And the foundation of the home, I'll say this again, my major at school was marriage, family, human development. That foundation is crucial.
Yeah.
It is that foundation of a family. It is the most powerful gift we can give our family.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the adversary is trying to tear apart. At its very core is the family, and that's the core foundation of society. And you start doing away with that core foundation, you have a foundation that's extremely sandy and that's just going to fail.
Yeah, we need each other. Well, I just so grateful. I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for what we've endured in some areas and how we've been blessed in some areas. But it's just such a blessing to be able to sit here and just tell people like, hey, you've got this. Like, we're together with your spouses. And I really hope, to anybody who's listening, I really hope, or watching, I hope that if you have a spouse, like, share that with them. Like, if they need to reach out to Justin, like, hey, dude,
let your guard down.
Let your guard down. Like this world is just too combative. Don't combat each other.
And there's a lot of pride out there too, and I think with guys, they just have to realize, hey, I don't have all the answers.
Yeah. Well, neither do we, but we find them together.
Yeah, exactly.
We find them
and so it's like, hey, if you can kind of come together and find common ground, then that's the first step.
You want to know what I want to say? I want to say, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. That's how we end prayers, and that's how we end talks at church. So, all right. Well, we've got some great things coming up on future episodes. I'm excited. Like, now that we're in Utah, I feel like doors are wide open. Like, we're ready to connect with people and bring them in. I'm just so excited. So, all right. I'm so grateful for you, honey, and I'm just so grateful to be here. And that's a wrap.